Tetsuji Tanaka, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes.
Kyrgyzstan broke away from the Soviet Union in 1991. For over 10 years since independence, President Askar Akayev has been leading the country. Professor, what has been the main focus of President Akayev's strategy for the nation building of the Kyrgyz Republic?
Yeah, well, politically, President Akayev has concentrated on making the country be the most advanced democratic in Central Asia, in Central Asia. But I'd say that his government has put more emphasis on developing the country economically than politically. And Kyrgyzstan is an interlocked country, as you know, and it is not so much blessed with natural resources as the other Central Asian countries. Therefore, President Akayev has been trying very hard to establish a full-fledged market economy in the country and to promote active trade and investment.
Anti-government and anti-Akayev demonstrations had been continuing in Kyrgyzstan for the past 3 months or so. Now, the start was the clash between the police and the demonstrators in Jalalabad in March, killing as many as 6 civilians. The police actually opened fire at the demonstrators during this time. Now, why did this March incident occur? What is the public trying to say? Why is everybody protesting so much?
It is said that the direct cause of the incident is the strong protest against the arrest of Mr. Bakhmazarov, an assembly member belonging to the anti-Akayev faction. Mr. Bakhmazarov is from the southern region. He was the chairman of the legal committee and was maintaining that signing the demarcation treaty with China was against the constitution of the nation. However, there are more serious causes in the background. And firstly, the standard of living lowered since the independence, and it has not recovered the previous level from 10 years ago yet. It means before independence level yet. Secondly, the existing government is operated based on the opinion of the assembly members from the northern part of the country. In fact, there are basic conflicts between the northern and the southern tribes, or regional conflict, northern and the southern in Kyrgyzstan. And thirdly, the power of the state has been strengthening in recent years in Kyrgyzstan, like the other Central Asian countries. And the people are feeling uneasy about this tendency.
In this past May, President Akayev advised the Bakiev cabinet to resign and named Mr. Tanayev as the new prime minister. However, it does not seem that even the Tanayev cabinet has been successful to bring the domestic situation under control. What are the major reasons for this continuing national disorder?
Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, anti-government demonstrations continued in Jalalabad even after the Bakiev cabinet resigned and Mr. Tanayev assumed office as prime minister. But I'd say that the situation has been improving since Prime Minister Tanayev proclaimed an amnesty law, so to speak, amnesty law earlier this month. In fact, Mr. Tanayev was the head of the investigation committee of the March incident before he coming up to the prime minister position, and that the police opened the fire at the rallying citizens. The amnesty bill passed the lower house on June 28th and the upper house on July 3rd. And in addition, Prime Minister Tanayev announced that nobody would be found guilty of the incident in question, regardless which party they might belong. The peace and the quiet have been lasting since his announcement, anyway, tentatively. Yeah.
Now, to change my line of questioning just a bit, Kyrgyzstan signed the demarcation treaty with China in 1999. And it said that we've heard that the Kyrgyz assembly is criticizing the government for the decision, saying that the treaty is interpreted as the cession of the Kyrgyz territory to China. Could you tell us a bit more about this border issue between Kyrgyzstan and China?
Yes, good question. The border between Kyrgyzstan and China was not very clear at the 5 point what district, even when Kyrgyzstan was part of the Soviet Union. President Akayev met Chinese President Chiang Tzu-min in 1996 and 1999 to talk over and sign the treaty of the border issue. And finally, the two countries agreed to sign the demarcation treaty that determines the border clearly. The fact indicates that the border issue has been settled from the international point of view between country by country. But however, the treaty has not been ratified domestically, I mean within Kyrgyzstan domestically. Rather, numerous voices have been raised against the content of the treaty in the Kyrgyz assembly, and many assembly members say that Akayev's government conceded too much to China. In response, the former foreign minister, Iman Aliyev, explained in the negotiation that 70% of the Kyrgyz claim was accepted, compared to 30% for the Chinese claim. However, his explanation failed to convince the assembly members. So finally, Mr. Iman Aliyev stepped down from the post of foreign minister as the Bakiyev cabinet resigned on May 20th. Yes.
Right. Now, the question of 9/11. After the terrorist attacks on the United States on September 11th, President Akayev expressed his support to the United States earlier than many countries. Following this, Kyrgyzstan allowed the U.S., French, and some other allied countries to use its airports and also fly over the Kyrgyz territory. Now, Professor, on ground, have you noticed any changes? What sort of changes have been happening in Kyrgyzstan?
It's really difficult, but the contract is effective for the period of over 1 year. According to this contract, the American and Allied forces are allowed to use the Manas International Airport. Manas is the name of a national hero about 1,000 years ago. Manas International Airport and nearby base with 3,000 troops and 40 warplanes station. And I visited the U.S. base with special permission last month, this June, and I was surprised at its size, very big. It was huge and full-fledged. I was under the impression that the American forces would stay in the Kyrgyzstan for a long period, anyway, more than 1 year. In fact, the stationing of the American forces is not so bad for Kyrgyzstan. The landing fee for one aircraft, one warcraft, is $7,000 US dollar. Of course, the forces spend a lot of money on other things also. So it is expected that the stationing of the foreign forces will bring a lot of direct positive effect to the Kyrgyz economy. The Kyrgyz people are quite about this issue as of present because the soldiers do not show up in the nearby towns very often. There are practically no strong movement against the U.S. and its allied forces. Some even have a cool attitude towards the issue and say that it was necessary for the U.S. forces to advance in Kyrgyzstan from a historic point of view.
Now, as you explained earlier in this interview, Kyrgyzstan is trying to develop a full-fledged market economy. And also with this changing international situation, we shall have more probably direct money coming in. Even then, There are continuous anti-government demonstrations, and this is closely related to the inequality of the distribution of wealth in the country. Now, according to the statistics that we found out, 55.3% of the total Kyrgyz population is below the poverty line, and 23.3% are extremely poor. That makes a staggeringly large part of the population living in very poor conditions. Now, why is Kyrgyzstan so poor?
So, the Kyrgyz people are basically very studious people. We can think of 4 big reasons for the present situation. One, the main industry agriculture and stock farming. The same since the day when Kyrgyzstan was part of the Soviet Union. And the country does not have many resources for boosting the domestic economy. The second two, Kyrgyzstan is a landlocked country, as you know, based in the center of the huge continent, Eurasian continent. This means that the country is handicapped in terms of trade and distribution, communication also. And number three, the country lacks energy resources such as oil and natural gas that are the major sources of foreign capital, foreign currency in other Central Asian countries. Probably, this is one of the most serious problems impeding the economic development of Kyrgyzstan. It's true that some foreign affiliated firms are operating in Kyrgyzstan, but most of them are from the tertiary industry, sub-industry, including distribution and retailing, that ensure a rapid revolving of funds. In the meantime, practically no foreign firms invest in the development of the Kyrgyzstan manufacturing side, manufacturing and export industries. This situation is very serious for the country, and I think this is the fourth reason for the widespread of the poverty in Kyrgyzstan.
Finally, Professor Tanaka, where is Kyrgyzstan going? What would you tell us about the future of the Kyrgyz situation?
It's very important. I think that the problem of the continuous anti-government demonstration will be settled before long. On the other hand, it will take Kyrgyzstan quite some time to solve the inequality of income and living standard between the northern, as I told you, between the northern and the southern region, and settle the poverty problem. I think the Kyrgyz government must solve more fundamental problems in order to solve the poverty problem. And as a first step in this line, the government must return to the beginning of the economic development and put special emphasis on the growth of the manufacturing industries, plus the alternative industry for import industry and the export industry. And Kyrgyzstan has introduced a market mechanism in economy and democracy in politics. The international community recognized Kyrgyzstan in these fields. So therefore, I can advise that Kyrgyzstan will not run counter to what it's been doing and work even harder to get the financial support from international organizations and the industrialized country of the West. In the future, I think that Kyrgyzstan will need to set up a relatively loose political and economical tie framework with the neighboring Central Asian country or with the other CS country neighbors. By the way, some reports say that a series of anti-government demonstrations in Jalalabad was backed up by Kyrgyzstan in Sarmat, which is a group of Islamic extremist group active in Central Asia. So I'd like to add that Kyrgyzstan also has to pay the closest attention to religious movement also.
Professor Tetsuji Tanaka, thank you very much for this multifaceted opinion and view of Kyrgyzstan.
You're welcome.
That was visiting Professor Tetsuji Tanaka of the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, interviewed by Jandi Damaron Nandan.